boat. Go on a boat.
Hey folks, Randy Henry here from beautiful Silver, Oregon. It's a bluebird day. It's gorgeous. It's going to be a little bit warm, and tomorrow it's going to get even warmer. So I am working on the cabin panels. I know I've been doing that for a while, but I brought them back in. And there's other components. There's the lower panel that's just the long, sort of the curved shelf. Then you have to make the 1.5 inch wide flat kind of joints that sit on that curved shelf, and then you do the panels that include the windows, and those need to be perfectly straight. So I've got all those prepared now. Glassed on, everything is glassed on both sides. Doing it before I put it up, and now I'm actually cutting out the windows. And obviously that's a piece where, like I said in the last video, you want to measure a few times and cut once. So I'm doing a little bit of practice work to make sure I can cut straight lines and get this done. But here's what it looks like. I've got everything scribed very clearly, making sure my blades are good and sharp so I can cut through this. It's just, again, it's that 1/4 inch marine, but I've got a 10 ounce fiberglass cloth on each side. I went with the 10 ounce. I suppose I could have done a little bit lighter, but I really wanted kind of all the stiffness that I can get on that. It is ready to go, and I am starting to cut, and pretty soon they'll go out here. These are my lower sides, and they are ready to go. Nothing special there, just a long piece of wood with the joint in it. And then I will start mounting those on the bulkhead. Yeah, you might get the idea from my shop that I do like boats. I like building things. Model boats from a project some years ago. One of the things I purchased about 1.5 years ago coming into this project is an old Thompson sewing machine. It's an upholstery machine, and I've been using it to repair some of the canvas on my Thunderjet, and I'll be using it to do some of the upholstery in my Great Alaskan. So that's going to be a whole new gig. That will be my winter gig. Something to do this winter when I almost can't imagine the time that I'm not building this boat. It's become part of my life. One thing I figured out with my DeWalt recently is you can reverse the shoe on the bottom. And the reason you do that is when you flip it around, it locks into a 90-degree position only. You can't change it. It's 90 degrees. It's got real close guides to the blade, so the blade's not going to jump out much. And for 90% of what I'm doing on this, that's actually how I want it. The other thing I did, because I've made mistakes in the past, is before I get to each radius that I have to cut, I put a thicker black mark. So if I'm deep in thought, cutting my jigsaw line, I just don't cruise on past it and head south and end up with a bad cut. It's sort of a clue that there's a right turn coming up. Seems to work pretty well. Yeah, one thing I'm doing here on the side panels is I'm adding doublers. So these are 1.5 inch wide pieces of 1/2 inch plywood. I'm going to add it along the bottom and along the top and between the windows. But you have to do it in a way that's not going to interfere with the, what do you call it, the flange, the windowsill. And the reason I'm adding them now as opposed to before I cut the windows out is, at least on the top here, it would have interfered with cutting out the windows. So adding them now, but I'm not going to glue them down yet. I'm going to screw them in place, going through the 1/4 inch into the 1/2 inch up, go in and fit the piece onto the boat and make sure that I like the way that it looks. One other thing I did here is I'm scarfing together 1.5 inch pieces. I'm going to glue them in place. So I have a screw here and a screw here. And one thing I find that works well, I made a little jig for my table saw that holds I can clamp 3 or 4 pieces of wood up to 2.5 inches thick or 2.5 inches wide. Run them through the saw and I get a really nice scarf joint. If you fasten this one, you see how this is cut at an angle coming up. If you fasten this one down first, then you can just tap this one in, slide it in, and you'll get a really great joint. I mean, you tap it in there till it's firm. Don't cram it under there so you're wedging this up, but if you just tap it in, it'll slide right in face and you get a really good joint. A couple of screws to hold it in place, and it's good. As soon as I figure out if it fits or not, I will come back, take those off, and glue those into place. Okay, and as they say, the devil is in the details. So I drop this into place, and right off the bat, I'm real high up there. Then I realize, oh, I'm gonna have to notch the support here and that'll fall down about 3/4 of an inch. So that'll work. I've got a 1/4 inch extra space back here. So I'll raise that up to where I wanna go. Because I cut a piece badly. So, now I just have to figure out how to make that right. But it looks pretty cool. Well, okay then, I've got it fitted here. Going up the windshield, this was tricky. I had to cut this to fit over the dash, leaving the outside flat. I was gonna trim that up, but I ended up using my grinder to flatten out the shelf there so it's level with this small shelf, which continues when this is straight. And it's pretty close now. I'll have to put a 2x4 along the side of it to make sure it's flush. Well, definitely it's going to be close there, but I guess that's how it's designed. But it took a lot of trimming to get everything to fit just right. As I started looking at it, I realized that this shoulder was actually 1 inch higher than the other shoulder. I had done a trim to get this side to fit, and I hadn't followed up over here. So I was using this piece, treating it as a mirror image, putting it over there, noticed the difference, came back and trued that up. I'm going to continue this down at an angle and then bring it back a little bit. So this works really well for shaping wood. It's just an angle grinder with the flap sander. And if you draw a flush line on anything, you can typically come along with that and comb it down to where you're pretty darn flat. So, all in all, I think I'm ready to move on to the next step. Yeah, and as always, we like symmetry in a boat, at least side to side. So I wanted the sides to be exactly the same. They were off 1/4 inch, so I trued them up. At one point, I wanted to double check that my bulkhead was absolutely vertical. So I did the old a squared plus b squared c squared square root of c, and it was off by 1 inch. So I brought that forward a little bit and reflected that in this. Again, that things wiggle when you're building them and move out of place. And that's your lesson for the day. Things wiggle and they move out of place. Anyway, it's looking pretty good. So I actually laid one panel, the port panel, over the starboard panel, traced out the windows, traced out the sides, and created mirror images of them. So they are cut and the supports are screwed in, and now I'm just going to epoxy laminate everything together. Take a few hours to cure and then I can install them. And since it's supposed to hit 96 here today, I think I'll do it this morning while the shop is cool, so I don't smoke another batch of epoxy. And the surplus windows that I bought on auction actually just plug right in. I got the holes just right, so that's good. The other window should be in the next, well, it should be in this week, I hope. Hey, it's been a long time since I have checked in. I suppose you wonder what I've been up to. Well, There's been a fair amount of fishing going on this summer. Daughter out for a few weeks, spent a couple weeks putting in a new floor in the downstairs of the house, porcelain tile. That certainly was a job I didn't expect it to be, but I learned a lot, and it's done, and the house looks much better. So I was getting ready to dive back in, did a little bit of work on the boat, and then I decided, you know, I'm getting actually pretty close to need to put it on the trailer. So I needed to get busy on the trailer. This is a trailer I bought used. My expectation is at some point in the near future I will replace it, but for now I got a good deal on it. I am not trusting it as it came to me, so I have completely gone through it and have done a lot of work. I completely stripped off the disc brakes, rebuilt the, not the actuator, the things that activate the disc pads, those things. New seals, new gaskets, a couple of new pistons, and some of them cleaned them off. I'm refiguring the bed so that it works for the boat, and just generally cleaning it up. So it's got good tires, it's got a brand new actuator up front. The cylinders, I mean, everything looked in good shape. It's just old, so it is getting renewed from the ground up. Practicing my welding skills, trying to get the bed set up right. I'm going to have some other welds inspected where I did some work on the axles, but I think it's going to be fun, and I'm pretty pleased with the way it's turning out.